Hey guys, so now that we've talked about how to find the mean, now we're going to go into finding what we call the median. And we've talked about this a little bit, but when you find a median, what you're really doing, like we said, median sounds like middle. So when you're doing median, you're looking for the middle number instead of data. So what we're going to do before we get into that, though, is we're going to talk about a situation where knowing the mean or the average of a situation might not really be that reliable. So, one of the best examples for me when I do these, especially because it applies to you guys, are when we're calculating test scores. So, if I'm grading a test, typically average you would think would give you a good idea of okay, if the average was an 80, I would expect to be somewhere close to the average if I typically am in the middle on my class grades or whatever. So we're going to see though that it really depends on what the scores are. If the scores are really close together, then yeah, average is probably pretty reliable to help you figure out what you might get for a score. But I'm going to show you guys an example of when it might not be all that reliable. So what I've done here, guys, is I've come up with a list of data. And what I'm assuming that 15 people took a test. And so what I've done is I just came up with some scores. So here's some of the scores that they have. And if we look, what I've done is, you're not really going to expect to get scores that are this few of a unique numbers, like 59 and 100 only. Probably not going to happen, but this exaggeration, though, will show you, though, that sometimes means not the best idea. So here's my list. Looks like I have a lot of people made 59s on it, which would be an F, which we wouldn't be hoping to get on a test. And a few people just happened to really know it and they knocked it out of the park and they got a 100 on the test. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to figure out, okay, what's the average of these scores? Well, if I do that, remember what we said, if you want to find the mean, you need to take the scores or the list of numbers, you need to add them all up. Well, if I do that, I end up getting 1,049 if I add all these numbers up. And when I divide it by 15, I end up getting an average of 70%. Now, I didn't have percents on these, and I should have put percentages on these first. But as I said, we're talking about test scores. So we're going to assume that these are just percentages. So we're just going to say the test average was a 70%. Well, if you think about it, though, you don't even see 70% as a score on any of these. People either made an 100 or a 59. They either made an A or an F. So this average doesn't seem very reliable. And just a couple of notes here. As we've said, we had 11 out of 15 failed the test. And then only 4 out of 15 passed. They got it above a 70. So for the average to be a 70 on this, which we found with the mean, that doesn't really seem very reliable because it's saying the average is a 70, but most people failed the test. So that average doesn't go along with the majority of what people got on the test. So what we're going to do here is we're going to see why median might be more reliable for situations like these. But we'll get to that in just a second. So what we're looking at, guys, is we are looking at the AMI Day 7 packet. And I'll come back to this problem I just wrote down here in a second, and we'll try it out. But first, let's do a couple examples problems. So we're looking, again, at AMI Day 7, and we're going to start on the side that says find the median number 1. So again, they tell you guys some information here about how to do the median. So just to kind of read it, it says find the median of each data set below. You can find the median by putting each set of numbers in order from least to greatest. The median is the middle number in the ordered list of numbers. So, guys, that's a really important point to make there. This is something that in years past when I've taught this, most people would miss this when doing median because they would forget that step that they mentioned in there. You need to order the numbers first. In other words, start with the smallest, order it all the way up to the greatest first. If you don't do that, you will not get the correct answer. And I will show you when we go over a couple examples here how that could mess you up if you don't put them in order first. But let's look at the example they gave us first. The example they give us says that here are the numbers in the set: 2, 2, 8, 10, and 7. And if you remember from yesterday, this is almost identical to the set they gave you for the mean, but it looks like they switched that 7 and 8 out from yesterday. Well, last number was an 8, now it's a 7. But regardless, there's our list: 2, 2, 8, 10, and 7. So again, it tells you order them from least to greatest. There's a couple of 2s, so they are the lowest number, so they go first, and then 7, then 8, then 10. Simple enough. Then it says, and this is what I like to do too, so I'm glad they mentioned this, because there's more than one way to find median. But I think that the way they show you is probably the easiest way to see it. It says cross out the lowest and highest number until you get to the median. And guys, if you notice, what they have done here is they're crossing out the same amount of numbers on the left as the right. There are 2 numbers crossed out on the left side, both of the 2s, and there are 2 numbers crossed out on the right side, the 8 and the 10. That shows that they have gotten rid of the same amount of numbers on both sides. So the same amount have been gotten rid of, and so they've kept it even. And what they did is now they know exactly what number's in the middle, because after crossing out the same amount on each side, there's only one number left, and it's 7. Therefore, if you put those numbers from least to greatest order, you would get 7 in the middle. So the 7 is the median. So you might be thinking, well, what good is median to find? Like, why find the median? Well, it helps because it's a really good way of saying, how do you stack up to the other people around you, if you want to think of it in terms of test scores. So we're just going to kind of keep with the test score idea. So let's say I gave a test and I passed out the tests, and we talked about the median, and I said that the median was 78. Well, that means if I took the test scores and I ordered them from least to greatest, that means that the very middle, the person that was dead middle score, half the class scored higher than them, half the class scored lower than them, they were right there at a 78. So in other words, if you scored higher than a 78, you were in the top half of the class. And if you scored lower than a 78, you're in the bottom half, because the median cuts it right in the middle and shows you where the upper half and the lower half of the data is, where they are. So it helps you see, okay, how do I stack up with the rest of the class, the rest of the data? Or if you're measuring other things, same idea. How does the number I get measure up to the rest of the data? Is it high compared to most of it? Is it lower? Or maybe it's right in the middle. Maybe you scored dead center where you're just right mid-pack, and there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe it's the score you were hoping to get. Maybe you overachieved and got a higher score. You never know. But that's really where median can be applicable, where it can be practical, where you can basically just see how you stack up with everybody else. So we're going to start with a few examples here, and then we'll go back to that original example that I showed you guys on mean with the 59 and 100 test scores, and just see how the mean and the median differ in that one. But let's just go ahead and jump into a couple examples on the side that says median, find the median number 1. So these are going to be pretty straightforward, guys. I don't think these will be too hard for us, but just remember, you got to order them first. So if we look at the very first question on this one, and they do a really good job on this sheet, guys, of giving you the steps so you're not forgetting to order them. So I like how they kind of give you a good introduction here. These are really good at just going step by step for you. But on number 1, our data set is 1, 9, 6, 8, and 4. So I have that written down on my sheet here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do what it says first. It says order it from least to greatest. Well, if I'm going to do that, I need to look at my list and think about least to greatest. So I'm just going to write least to greatest, and then I'm going to order it. So if I order those numbers, it looks like the least number is 1. So I'm going to start with 1. And then what I'm going to do, guys, is every time I write down a number, just like I talked about on an earlier lesson, once you use the number in a list, cross it out so you don't get confused and use it again. So I'm going to cross that 1 out of the original list. And then the next smallest number, the next least number, looks like it's going to be the 4. So I'll write the 4 down, cross it off my list. And then the next one looks like it's going to be 6. So I'm going to cross the 6 off after I write it down. And then the next biggest number looks like 8. So I'll write that down and cross it off. And then the biggest number and the only number left appears to be 9. So I'll write that down and cross it off. So what I have so far looks like this. So I'm finding the median, number 1. I had my list of numbers and greatest. And as I wrote them, I crossed them off. So now I know I've used every number. None of them are getting repeated on accident. Every one of them has been used. That, and really, guys, that's, to me, the most complicated part of median. If you can list them in order, you've done the most complicated part, which, let's be honest, it isn't really too complicated. So now all I have to do is do what they showed me up there. Just start crossing off on each side. And what I like to do is I'll just go 1 on the left side and 1 on the right side. So far, I've crossed out the least number and the greatest. And now I'll just do it one more time. I'll go 1 on the left and 1 on the right. And if I do that, I've gone the same amount on the left side, 2, and the same amount on the right side, 2. They're even, which means the only thing left is the very middle number, which is a 6. So the median has to be 6. So on number 1, when they're on the column where they're asking for the median, we can just go ahead and call it 6. Okay, so now I'm going to show you guys what would happen if I didn't. And actually, this is a bit of a coincidence, but sometimes you might get lucky and get it right if you don't put it in order, which unfortunately happens on this one, but I'll go ahead and do it anyway. I'm going to write the list down just the way they wrote it, and I'm going to do the same thing I just did. Okay, 1 on the left, 1 on the right, 1 on the left, 1 on the right. If I did it that way, I also, in a very lucky situation here, got a correct answer of 6 as well. But please do not count on that to always work, because we got extremely fortunate that this had the middle number in the very middle of the list before they ever ordered it. So don't count your luck thinking that that'll happen every time. So please do not just write it down like this, because you're not always going to get it right. You're most likely going to miss it if you don't order it like we did right here. So keep that in mind. That right there, don't do it. So let's see if we get quite so lucky with that scenario on the next one. So on the next one, I'm going to skip down to number 3 on the same side. So we're still on find the median part 1, but I'm going to skip down to number 3. Number 3 has a pretty long list. I figured let's do one of the more challenging ones. So I'm not just giving you the easy, toss an easy one to you examples here. Let's try a challenging one together. So I'm going to do the same thing. The first step of median is go least to greatest. So I'm just going to write that down again. And guys, you don't have to write this down. I just try to make it as easy to understand what I'm doing here as possible. So I'm just going to go ahead and write the words least to greatest so you know what's going on here. Okay, so I got my list, and it looks like, starting with my least number, it looks like it's 1. So I'm going to write down 1, and cross it off the original list. Then the next number appears to be a 5. So I'm going to write it down, cross it off, and I'm just going to keep going. I think this is pretty self-explanatory at this point. So I'm just going to keep going here. The next number appears to be a 6. So I'll write that down, cross it off. And then the next number appears to be an 8. Write it down, cross it off. And then a 9. Write it down, cross it off. Then a 10. Cross it off. And then it looks like in this scenario, and you'll see this pretty often when you're looking for median, the last 3 numbers are all 12. So I'll just go ahead and write down, since I know I'll just do it one at a time, just so, you could count, okay, there's 3 12s, and just write 3 12s and cross them all 3 off at once if you want. But I just prefer to play it safe and just write them down one at a time so I don't try to shortcut it and miss something, especially since if you do these with the steps, guys, they're really easy to get. I'd rather just make sure to play it safe and not mess up an easy answer. So I've done what I need to do. On number 3, I've taken it and I've ordered it from least to greatest. And then here's one thing to think about too. What I like to do is I like to check myself. Okay, if I look at my list, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 numbers. So I have 9 numbers, and it looks like I forgot that cross that middle 12 off. But again, we got them all. Because if I look at my list, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 numbers as well. There are just as many numbers down here as there are up here, which means I have not missed a number. I have everything I need. So I'm going to go ahead and do what we know to do. We are going to cross them off one at a time, one on the left, one on the right, equal amount, one at a time, each direction, and keep it even on both sides so that we don't mess it up. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to cross off one on the left, one on the right. So the 1 and the 12 are gone. And then I'm going to cross off the 5 and the 12. And then the 6 and the 12. And then the 8 and the 10. And if I do that, the only number left in the very middle is the 9, as you can see right here. And we can check ourselves to see that we did everything right. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers crossed off on the left side, and 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers crossed off on the right side. So I've done all of it correctly. So it looks like my median on number 3 must be 9. Okay, so if I continue on, let's check and see if we got the next part correct here. So like I said, we got lucky on the first one. The middle one was 6, even if I didn't order it. Let's see if we get that lucky this time. So I'm going to write them down just the way they wrote them. I'm going to have 12, 8, 10, 5, 12, 9, 6, 1, and 12. Just the way they wrote them. And now I'm going to do what I did again and see if not ordering them will get me the right answer here. So I'm going to cross off one on the left, one on the right. So both the 12s are out. And then the 8 and the 1, the 10 and the 6, the 5 and the 9. So if I do that, I get an answer of 12. That is not the median. We determined it needed to be 9 because when we put it in order, the middle number was a 9. So yes, the order matters, guys. Do not forget on median, they have to go in the exact order, least to greatest, before you ever try to find the middle one. If not, you're going to get a wrong answer like this one. So 12 is not the answer. It is 9. So don't get mixed up and think that that bottom one I'm doing on here is correct, because it's not. We just got lucky on number 1 and got the same answer of 6 as we did when we listed it correctly. Okay. All right. So those are the simple ones. Those are median answers when there's only one number in the middle, but that's not always going to be the case. It's not always going to be, oh, just find that one single middle number and that's the answer. What we're going to find is sometimes you're going to have two numbers in the middle, and we're going to have to figure out what to do when you have that situation happen. So let's take a look at the other side that's called finding the median number 2. And let's just talk about what it says here. We'll just kind of they do a pretty good job at explaining what to do. So let's just read what it says. It says find the median of each data set below. Okay, we know how to do that. You can find the median by putting each set of numbers in order from least to greatest. Again, we know how to do that. That's what we did on the other side. We went least to greatest first. It says the median is the middle number in the ordered list of numbers. Again, nothing new. But here's the new idea. If you have two numbers left in the middle, find the halfway point between the two remaining numbers, or just add them together and divide by 2. I would highly recommend doing that second thing they said. If you have 2 in the middle, you add them together and divide by 2, because that will guarantee that you have the middle number on the list. So let's look at what the example they gave us shows. They give us a set of numbers again. If you notice, this set of numbers is very similar to the set we saw on the other side of the sheet on finding the median number 1, but this time they went ahead and threw another 10 at the end of the list. So now instead of having 5 numbers, now we have 6. So they do the same thing again, order them from least to greatest, 2, 2, 7, 8, 10, and 10. And then, if you notice, they do the same thing again. They cross 2 on the left and 2 on the right. 2 of them are crossed out. But what you see on here is you have 2 numbers in the middle. You have a 7 and an 8. So let's just talk about the 2 ways I said you could do it. On this situation, if 7 or an 8 are in the middle and they want the midway point, well, halfway between 7 and 8 is 7.5, right? If you ever have 2 whole numbers that are 1 apart, the midway point is just the 0.5 that goes in between them. Between 7 and 8, 7.5. If you were between 9 and 10, it'd be 9.5. 15 and 16 would be 15.5 if you wanted the middle of those. So that's how those work. Or you can just do like they said. Take a calculator, add the 2 numbers together. 7 plus 8 is 15. And then they say divide that by 2. Well, if you put in your calculator 15 divided by 2, you get 7.5 as well. I, again, would recommend to do that just because it takes away the chance of a mental math error where, at least with the calculator, you guarantee it. And you know how to do it. That's the key. The key thing to grab out of this, guys, is do you know the steps? It's one thing just to be able to do something in your head, but it doesn't do any good if you don't know the steps. So we're going to focus on just making sure we know the steps here. Okay. So we're going to do 2 examples on this side, and then we'll go back to that original problem to wrap up. And that should have us good to go for our assignment here, guys. So let's talk about number 1 on finding the median number 2. So on problem number 1 on that side, they give us a list of numbers, and that list is 11, 2, 9, 6, 8, and 4. So I'm just going to have the list written down right here. Here it is again. And we're going to do exactly what we decided to do on the other side. First step, list them from least to greatest. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. If I do that on least to greatest, the lowest number that I have looks like it's a 2. Cross it out, and then a 4. Cross it out, and then a 6. Cross out the 6. And 8. Cross it out. 9. Cross it out. 11. Cross it out. So there we go. We have the list, and we have it written in order from least to greatest. Okay? Now we know what to do here. We're going to start crossing them out. And now, guys, one thing to remember when you're doing these, don't forget, don't just cross them out till there's no numbers left. That doesn't do you any good. Because if you look at this list, you could just cross 3 numbers out on each side, and you've crossed an equal amount out, but now there's nothing left. So don't do that. You're either going to have 1 number left or 2 when you do median. You're never going to have none. If you have no numbers left, you need to go back a step. You went too far. So I'm going to start one at a time. I'm going to cross the 2 out and the 11 out. And keep in mind, I'm doing this in the list where I ordered them from least to greatest. Then I'll cross out the 4 and the 9. And if I do that, again, as you can see, I can't just cross the next 2 out because then there'd be nothing left. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to find the midway point of these 2 numbers. So again, if we look at this, guys, you could really do either method here. I'm not going to be too strict on either one. They're both good ways to do it. If you're good at finding the midway point in your head when you see 2 numbers, that's totally fine. I trust you know what to do. Let's write it down. So if we look at this, I mean, it's pretty easy. I would expect most of us to know this anyway. If 6 and 8 are the 2 in the middle, well, midway between 6 and 8 is 7. So it seems like the median would need to be 7. So if you know that, you can just go ahead and write it down and say the median is 7. But let's just go ahead and do it the other way too, just so we know what's going on here. So I have my 2 in the middle. I have 6 and 8. And remember what they said. The other way to find the median is add them together. So 6 plus 8 gives me 14. And once I do that, it says divide it by 2 because you're just finding the average of the 2 numbers in the middle to get the midpoint. So 14 divided by 2, again, multiplication tables. If 2 times 7 is 14, that means 14 divided by 2 is 7. So we're correct with that idea of finding the midpoint because the midpoint of 6 and 8 is indeed 7. So the correct answer on number 1 on the finding the median number 2 side of the paper, 7. Okay. All right. Now we're going to do one more. We're going to look at another long one. We're going to do 3 again. Got a long list here, so we'll practice it just so we know what's going on again. And guys, at this point, we're not going to waste time seeing if the original order of the list would get you the correct answer because we've already proven that it's not reliable. Sometimes it works, but it most likely will not. So we're just going to stick with what we know to do. Put it in order from least to greatest, then find the middle. All right, so on this list, I have a pretty long list here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 numbers, it looks like. So I'm just going to go ahead and start listing them from least to greatest. So if I do that, looking at them from least to greatest, it looks like the least number in the list is going to be a 6. So I'm going to start with 6, cross it out. Then if I scan through my list, it looks like 8 is next. So write it down, cross it out. And then the next number is a 9. Cross it out. Again, this is really useful. It seems simple, but it's very helpful, guys. Sometimes simple little tricks like this are good ways to keep from slipping up and putting an extra number or forgetting a number. So if I keep going, I see looks like I have multiple 10s here. Let's see. I see 1 10. I'm going to cross it out. I see another 10. I'm going to write it down and cross it out. And I see a third 10. I'm going to write it down, cross it out. Okay. Then it looks like I also have multiple 12s. I see 1 12. I'm going to write it down, cross it out. I have another 12. Write it down, cross it out. And then it looks like the next biggest number is a 15. Write it down, cross it out. And then the last one looks like a 22. Write it down, cross it out. So here's my list on the bottom, least to greatest. Again, we could check ourselves. See 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 numbers on my original list, which means if I did this right, this list should also have 10 numbers. And if I look at it, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 numbers. A little small there. Sorry about that. But we do have all 10, and we, from crossing out, have found that we aren't missing any. So now we're going to do what they say to do. We're going to find the number in the middle. So if I do that, I'll start with 6 on the left and then 22 on the far right. Now I've done 1 on each side. Now let's do 2 on each side. Got 8 and 15. And now I'm going to go for 3 on each side, 9 and 12. Then 4 on each side, 10 and 12. So here's where I'm at so far on my list. And if I look, I'm in an interesting scenario here. I have the same numbers in the middle, 2 10s. Well, honestly, we don't need to do any math here, guys, because if you have 2 10s, the midway point between 10 and 10 is 10. There's nothing else to it. So if you ever have 2 of the same numbers in the middle when you're looking for median, just write the number down. That's the median. If you have 2 5s, the median's 5. If you have 2 100s, the median's 100. Doesn't matter what they are. As long as they're the same number, the median's just going to be that number. So I don't even have to worry about adding them up and dividing by 2. I can just go ahead and just write down that the median on number 3 is 10. No math needed on that last step. Median is 10. So that's pretty much all there is for median, guys. But like I said, let's just go back and look at that original problem about the test scores and just see, okay, how would median be a little more useful in that situation than mean? And keep in mind that the only reason that mean appears to be more useful than the median, the reason that median seems to be more useful on that one is simply because there's numbers pretty spread out on this. If the test scores were more consistent and closer together, it could have easily been as reliable to the mean as well. So let's take a look. If we remember, my list had 11 59s in it. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut to the chase here on that example. I'm just going to write down 11 59s, one after the other. So 59, 59, 59, 59, and I'm just going to keep going until I have 11 of them. And again, this is important because, like we said, you cannot accurately find the median unless you have all the numbers written in order from least to greatest. If not, it's going to throw your answer off. So just check myself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I got 11 of them, 11 59s. And if you remember, 4 people in the class just really understood that test and they got a 100 on it. So there's 4 100s. And now I have what should be all 15 of my test scores again. So there they are again. Just to check myself, I should have had 15. So who else? Let's see if we got it right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, we got what we need. So I'm just going to do the same thing. Let's see how the median compared to the mean. If you remember, the mean was 70. The average was apparently a 70% on that test, which for some, it threw them off because if you're expecting an average of 70 and you get your test back and it's 59, you're going to think, well, I surely didn't do that bad on it if he said the average was a 70. So let's just see if the median would help us out better to get a more anticipated score on a test. And again, this is an extreme situation, guys. You're not normally going to see a test where most people fail it, but just usually an exaggeration helps make something a little more obvious when you're making a point about something. So we're just going to start the median here. I'm going to scratch off 59 and a 100, another 59 and a 100, a third 59 and a third 100, and a fourth 59 and a fourth 100. So if I look, I've gotten rid of all the 100s at this point. Honestly, if you notice, the middle is all 59s. So I could keep going, or I could just go ahead and say the median's 59. But just for detail's sake, let's just go ahead and finish it off by scratching off some more till we get to the middle. And if I do that, like we were expecting it to be, the median is a 59. So what that's telling us, guys, since the median's 59, if I were to talk about a test, let's say we took a test and I graded all of them, and I say, okay, guys, I did some data analysis and our median on our test was a 59. That would be telling you guys, if I just took our test scores and put them all out from least to greatest, the person that landed right in the middle and did the very most middle score on that test was a 59, which means half the class did better and half the class did worse than a 59. So if you were to get that, you would then think, oh, well, this test must not have gone very well if the middle person got a 59, because that means at least half the class failed the test, which would be a lot more obvious to see than if you were just told, oh, the mean, the average was a 70. So this is a situation where median is more useful to determine what you might expect to get on a test. Again, it makes more sense if you're trying to get your test score back and it says the median's a 59. You're not going to be shocked if you get a 59 or less or somewhere around there if you know that the middle number in the scores is a 59. Okay? It's going to take you by a lot less surprise than if I said, okay, the average is a 70. Right? So that's pretty much all there is for median, guys. So we've gone through two so far. We've gone through mean and median. I think they're pretty straightforward so far. I think the big thing about median, guys, I would call it the most complicated of the four that we talk about: mean, median, mode, and range, simply because that's the one where you absolutely have to put it in order. On the other ones, you could get away with not putting them in order. It's still easiest to put them in order on each one just because it helps to visualize a little more. They're in an order that makes a little more sense as far as trying to find numbers, which we'll talk about tomorrow when we're getting into mode. But that's the big thing that get people to miss median is they rush through it. They just take it in whatever order they're given, find the middle number and say, okay, that has to be the median. But it's not always the case. You have to put it in order if you want to guarantee that you're going to get it correct. So just remember the keywords, like we talked about a little bit in class. Median sounds like middle. Both have a D in the middle, so median, middle. So keep that in mind when you're doing those. So go ahead, guys, and try the rest of the AMI sheet for day 7. It should be pretty simple. There's really nothing else left on here that's that complicated. Remember, if you have two numbers in the middle, if you know what the midpoint of those two numbers are, you can just go ahead and write it down. Like the midpoint of 6 and 8 is 7. If you need to add them up and divide by 2, go ahead and do that. It's really not too complicated, especially with a calculator or phone. And if you have any questions on it, guys, just let me know. But complete both sides of that sheet, please, and make sure you get it turned in on our Google Classroom page. If you guys have any other questions about it, feel free to email me or message me about it. And thank you guys for all the communication today. I know it's been a new experience with our Google Classroom page, and I know I'm definitely learning a lot about it as I go through it too. Thank you guys for any kind of questions about how to do things or concerns. And thank you for the questions that you're giving me about our work so far, even stuff from this past week, because I'm always happy to do another video to help explain problems like we had earlier with our frequency tables and histograms. So if you have anything, any kind of question I need to talk about, just email me, message me, and I'll be happy to put up another video to explain how to do it or to help you better understand it. And I'll post it on the Google Classroom page. So good luck with the rest of that sheet, guys, and make sure to complete it and message me with any questions you have. Y'all have a good day.